Yo, 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 welcome to the First Round Fantasy Podcast. I am your host today, Jacob Bartley. I am joined by Justin Morsaz. What is going on, man?
Oh, buddy, what is it, 21 days? I can't wait.
Ooh, yeah, we're getting the live countdown from Justin every week
I
till football season starts.
I don't want it to make it a habit. It's just something that I think of all the time, and it's sneaking up. You got to be
Yeah,
prepared for that
no,
draft.
I'm glad because I wasn't keeping track of the days, but you reminded me last week and this week. But so 3 weeks away, that is crazy. I feel like I can't believe that it's here almost. It's so crazy because, dude, I don't know about you, but my Sunday mornings are like just, it's better than Christmas, man. It's better than Christmas morning. Like, I just freaking, it's so good. And we get it every Sunday for 17 weeks straight.
We got an extra
Love
week
it.
coming our way.
Yeah, so I can't freaking wait. Today we are going to be talking about our wide receiver rankings for 2021. Again, these are redraft rankings. They are full PPR, and these are our personal ranks. You know, you might see a guy ranked super high that you disagree with. You might see a guy ranked super low that you completely disagree with, or that's far off from the general expert consensus. But these are our personal rankings. There's a reason behind them. And we'll go ahead and explain that. We're going to talk about some major differences in our wide receiver rankings. And again, like I mentioned last week, no big major game-changing news in the past week. So we're just going to move on into our rankings. But whenever something major does happen, we are definitely going to talk about that. And then also next week, we're going to be doing our tight end rankings. We're going to do our top 15. And we will also, since it is a shorter rankings list, we're going to be talking about the when to draft a tight end debate. Everybody has their own strategy when it comes to that. So look out for that next week. But enough said, we're going to get to our 2021 rankings. And Justin, why don't you give a little insight? What went into your thought process in doing these rankings? Because maybe wide receiver guru is too strong of a term, but you do have a tendency to, you've said for multiple years, you're more of a wide receiver guy. I see you in your lineups. You're starting multiple wide receivers in your flex spots as opposed to other teams who are like forcing starting running backs in those spots sometimes. So maybe give us your thoughts on wide receivers in general and then your thought process in your rankings. Like, how did you go about doing it?
All right. So basically, just to correct the record, I would say I'm a guru at this. I called Allen Robinson. I called Tyreek Hill. I called the most, in my opinion, I thought Allen Robinson, the year I got him on cheap, was undercover, but Tyler Boyd was super undercover that I've been able to sneak up. So hopefully I keep the streak alive. But basically, as I go through these rankings, PPR is the biggest factor to consider. So it bumps people up like back in the day, Wes Welker, Edelman, and now you kind of see not so much last year, but Thielen was the PPR guy. So that makes a huge difference in my rankings. And then I think the second contributing factor is quarterback play, obviously. So there are some guys that I'll mention in this list that I wish had better quarterback play because it would definitely cause them to be higher on my list. And then there's some people that people are not very hot on, but the type of offense they're in makes them more valuable in this PPR type of world. And especially with high-octane passing offenses, the touchdown is always a variable, but you could lean on like that statistical probability of them at least getting a touchdown a week, So if that happens, that player would probably be the best ever, but you know what I'm trying to point at right there.
Absolutely. And there are a ton of different factors that go into this. And like I said last week, the way I do all my positional rankings is I basically look at it as if I'm drafting. So I'm on the clock right now and I have to take a wide receiver basically. And who would I take? And then I go from there. And I act as if the previous guys are gone and everybody else left or who was available to me, and whoever I would draft is because essentially that's what you're doing is you're calculating what guys you would prefer to be on your team. I've noticed some other analysts, what they do is they create a rankings list, right? And it's all based on stats and mostly based on stats. But then when it comes to when they actually have to draft, they don't stick by their rankings. Like they don't actually, like, for example, they could have, Joe Mixon above Antonio Gibson on their rankings, but then they actually draft Antonio Gibson above Mixon in their drafts. And that's weird to me because, like, you should put your money where your mouth is. You shouldn't give advice to other people to do something that you wouldn't do, in my opinion. So I think our rankings are more accurate to the way we would draft, which I think is important. So let's get into it. We're going to do just like we did last time. We're going to go through we ranked our top 40. So we'll go through our 1 through 10, 11 through 20, 21 through 30. And then we'll see how much time we have if we can get some quick thoughts on those 31 through 40 guys. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up our 1 through 10s, and then I'm going to let Justin go ahead and start, maybe list his list, because we do have some audio listeners out there, and then we'll talk about maybe some major differences in his list or things that I want to point out. So if you're watching on YouTube, you got our lists right here. So let's go ahead and go through yours, Justin.
All right, top of the list, I would say it was harder than I thought, but I stuck with Devontae Adams. 2, Tyreek Hill. 3, Stephon Diggs. 4, Ridley. 5, DJ Metcalf. 6, D-Hop. 7, A.J. Brown. 8, Justin Jefferson. 9, Keenan Allen. And then top 10, rounding it off, scary Terry McLaurin.
Nice. I'll go ahead and list my list now, and then we can jump into both of them in a way. So at number 1, I have Tyreek Hill. Number 2, I have Devontae Adams. Number 3, I have Stephon Diggs. Number 4, I have DK Metcalf. Number 5, I have DeAndre Hopkins. Number 6, I have Justin Jefferson. Number 7, I have A.J. Brown. Number 8, Calvin Ridley. Number 9, CeeDee Lamb. And number 10, Terry McLaurin. So if I'm looking at this correctly, the only two differences, like, we all have the same guys except one guy each, and that's CeeDee Lamb is in my top 10 and Keenan Allen is in your top 10. Mm-hmm. I believe everybody else is on both of our lists, correct?
Yeah, we matched up, just different order.
Yeah, exactly. Different order, and then you got Keenan, I got CeeDee Lamb. So let me ask you, if what on your list do you feel strongly about that you think that maybe other people would mostly disagree with?
I think Ridley at 4. I'm not sure the ADP on this because I tend to trust my own insight when it comes to wide receivers, but based off like just the household names that are on this top 10, I can see how people would be sleeping on Calvin Ridley, not even making top 5. But I'm not even joking when I say if the Falcons click, I can see him as top receiver in the league statistically. But what's his ADP? Do you know?
So he's currently going as wide receiver 6,
okay.
And overall 20th off the board. But as far as we're concerned, the wide receiver part is all that matters.
Yeah, so I have him a little higher, I'd say.
That is interesting. Look, you have him at 4. I have him at 8, and his ADP is 6. So that's literally his ADP comes in the average of our 2 rankings.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I just love him. I think Julio's gone, rookie tight end. He's obviously going to take some heat, but they don't have much of a running game, and they're passing offense. So I just love him as a pickup this year.
Awesome. Yeah. I have Ridley at 8. So, and to me, I don't feel that's disrespectful. I think basically any of the guys that are 6 through 10 could finish in the top 5, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And maybe even a couple guys outside of my top 10. But basically, yeah, if you shifted all these guys in any order, I wouldn't complain too much, other than I feel maybe some of these guys can't get to number 1, but because that's very, very difficult. Before I talk about what I feel strongly about on my list, I want to ask you what surprises you the most on my list, because they might be the same thing.
I think it is the same thing, and that's CD breaking through to the top 10. I love it. I think if you see my rankings, we have a big discrepancy on CD. It's just that I like Amari.
You have him at 13, right?
Yeah. He's better than Amari, but I think Amari's better as a fantasy in the PPR. Like, he's turning into just like that big target hog in a sense, while CD, I think when he was on fire, is just big yardage, big catches, nice touchdowns. I think next year CD all day, but this year I think Amari is still taking a majority of it, so I couldn't the talent's there, but the production I don't think is going to warrant top 10. That's what I look at when I see your list. 9 is just a tad too high.
Yeah, you know, at first I was when I ranked, and that is the thing I feel strongly about because, like we said, our lists are pretty similar. Other than that, same guys, different order, and they're similar to most of the consensus lists out there. But I don't think a lot of people have CD in their top 10, and to me, I just think that I think eventually, I think he has the potential to be the number 1 overall wide receiver. And I'm not saying it's going to be this year, but I think he can be a perennial guy who is just the number 1 all year. At the very least for me, I think he can have a DeAndre Hopkins-like career where he's top 5 every single year once he really gets going. So I think he's going to, start heading towards that this year. He gets a full year with Dak Prescott if Dak Prescott can stay healthy. We don't know what that's going to look like. He was top 11 last year before Dak went out, and Cooper was even higher, to your point, which is that I won't be surprised at all if Amari Cooper outscores CeeDee Lamb this year at all, because Amari Cooper's the guy. He's more similar to like Keenan Allen, right, where he's going to get all the volume and he's very dependable. Where CeeDee Lamb, I can see him more like an A.J. Brown where it's low volume, but he's so productive with those touches that he's just blowing people away. So, it can go either way, but I'm calling my shot with CeeDee Lamb. He's, other than a Niner player, he's probably my favorite wide receiver in the league right now. He's so fun to watch. So I'm going to go with, I got CeeDee Lamb at number 9. So anything else that stood out to you in our top 10, or are you good to move on?
There's 2 big things I want to point out because, top 10, every draft pick makes or breaks your season. But if you hit on your first pick, you're going to have a nice time. Not to say depth won't matter at that point, but hitting makes sense. So the funny thing I thought about this list is a consensus at Diggs being 3 because Devontae or Hill are going to be your number 1 and 2. And I wanted to put Diggs up there, and I won't be surprised if he's up there, but I think Devontae and Tyreek are your 2 1A, 1Bs. And then the other point is A.J. Brown. We both have him at 7. I don't know his ADP. I don't know where he lies.
Yeah, that's crazy. We both have Diggs at 3. We both have A.J. Brown at 7, and we both have McLaurin at 10.
Yeah, and the reason I want to pinpoint A.J. Brown is because they made a huge change bringing in Julio. I can understand, he's going to be worse. The targets are going to be shared, or, hey, there's no more double teaming A.J. Brown, so he's going to have a field day out there. Personally, I'm on the latter. I think he's going to get less attention, equaling better games, because if you watch the Titans, it was run it up the gut with Henry or give it to A.J. Brown. There's no, other way of doing it for them. Corey Davis was nice, but it was A.J. Brown's world there. So my question to you is, are you liking A.J. with Julio, or do you think it still hurts him, but he's just as good to keep it going?
So I think a lot of people, once Julio moved to Tennessee, they moved A.J. Brown down their rankings list a little bit, maybe a couple spots or so. I didn't have my rankings done at that time, so I wouldn't have known. But I said this when it happened. I don't think it changed my outlook on A.J. Brown that much. If anything, the volume that it takes away from him is made up for by the attention that Julio's going to take away from the defense. Does that make sense? So, yes, he's going to take some targets away from A.J. Brown. Maybe A.J. Brown was going to get 10 targets a game this year. But if we move it down to 8 targets a game and you have these maybe the best cornerback on the other team has to now line up with Julio. Who are they going to line up with? The other guy's going to eat if they're not on that guy. So I think it kind of evens out in my opinion, because I don't think even if Julio was gone, I don't know if I can put A.J. Brown any higher. I mean, maybe you could in your mind, but to me, those factors make it even out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gain here, minus there. But I wanted to put him higher. I just had to consider, when you talk about the list of Ridley, Metcalf, D-Hop, Brown, it's like, I can see all of them going in any order. But then I broke it down to quarterback play, offense tendencies. So that's why I put A.J. Brown beneath just a little bit, but it's no slide on him. But you know what I was just thinking here, and I want to know your opinion before we move on? what did we say every single year in Atlanta? Like, what's wrong with them? Get Julio the ball in the red zone. This dude's a freaking beast. He jumps higher, catches the best balls. So what if we see a year where instead of in the 15 and the 10-yarder, AJ Brown gets the touchdowns, Julio's catching like mitts all day, getting those dump offs, easy slants, curls. Like, what if he has like a monstrous TD year just because of that's the new implementation for him? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that's a possibility. And, Tennessee's offense is just very efficient. So I think both guys are going to do well. And it's funny because both guys are injury prone, and I know there's been a new thing in fantasy that I noticed this year that people, I guess some doctors said that injury prone isn't a real term, like that doesn't exist. But to me, it kind of does. There's guys who miss more time than others due to being banged up and getting injuries. So I think I don't know what other term you could call it. They're often injured. It means the same thing. So both of these guys, I guarantee you, will miss a game or two throughout the year. And then the other guy, I guess, depending on who their opponent is, you can bump them up a little bit in your rankings that week.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think it's more so that in football, people get injured way, way more often, and it's always knickknacks. Whereas other sports, it's, oh, dude, this guy just can't keep that left ankle healthy.
That's
Whereas
true.
football, it's like I banged my shoulder, now I got a hamstring issue. I rolled my ankle, so it's like I can understand injury prone.
You're right, and they're basically like attacking each other every play. So I think every player is prone to get injured when you're doing that, right?
Yeah. But yeah, we got some good insight on the top 10, but I like the list. Both lists are strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way my spreadsheet lines up because now every time I move it, it's perfectly lined up to show the next 10. So let's go ahead and, another exact match to start with number 11. Let's go ahead and go through your 11 to 20, Justin.
All right. So 11, Allen Robinson, 12, Amari Cooper, 13, CD Lamb, 14, Woods, 15, Godwin, 16, Evans, 17, T. Higgins, 18, Cup, 19, Lockett, and 20, DJ Moore.
Wow. So I already can tell there's some big, huge things that we're going to get into in this section of our rankings. I'll go ahead and list mine real quick, and then we'll get into that. So at number 11, I also have Allen Robinson. Number 12, Keenan Allen. Number 13, Cooper Kupp. Number 14, Brandon Ayuk. Number 15, DJ Moore. Number 16, Mike Evans. Number 17, Amari Cooper. Number 18, Chris Godwin. Number 19, Julio Jones. And number 20, Robert Woods. We'll get into some discrepancies here in a minute. But what is the thing on your 11 through 20 list that you feel most strongly about?
I would say I feel most strongly about – it's so hard because it starts getting dirty in these waters right
here.
But
for sure.
I guess I would have to go with T. Higgins. I think your sentiment towards CD Lamb is kind of my T. Higgins light. Not that I think T. Higgins isn't awesome, but there's a lot of mouths to feed over there now. I think not that AJ Green took a lot, but he actually did take a lot of targets, which was weird. So I think moving on from him, bring in Jamar Chase. He's still a rookie, and we know what rookies can do, but I still think T. Higgins' talent is so elite that he will be the number one over there, but they'll all be useful. So I put T. Higgins up there, and again, I don't know the ADP, but I'm assuming that's pretty high for him. I would stick to my guns and say T. Higgins is the Bengals' number one wide receiver at end of year.
I actually agree with that, and I don't have to take Higgins as high as you. I have him at 21, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, he's wide receiver 28 right now. Look, I know I have him at 21, but 28 is too far. Because now we're basically 28 is saying he's a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I would love it if he was my wide receiver 3.
That's what I'm saying, dude. I have him as my wide receiver 2 in a dynasty league, and I'm happy with that. I have him and Metcalf as my top 2 wide receivers, and I'm ecstatic about that. So to have Higgins as a wide receiver 3, I think that's insane. Even though I do have him a little bit lower than you. And look, I'll just get right into it. I'm sure you noticed I have Brandon Ayuk at number 14, and I feel pretty strongly about this. And I forget where he is exactly on your list. Probably not too far after. You have him at 23. So, but I have him way up high on this side of the rankings. And I just think because I watched every Niner game last year, and he was playing with scrubs at quarterback. Way better athletes than I am, but compared to NFL standards, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, they were terrible last year.
Ugh.
And this guy was going up, jumping. He's like 5'10", 5'11". It's not like he's 6'4". He's jumping up in the middle of the defense, grabbing the ball, making huge plays, putting up 20 fantasy points a game in our scoring that we mainly play in. So this guy was just so electric, so explosive. I just buy it. And I know, look, he was playing. And I agree with this argument to a certain extent. A lot of people said he did a lot of his damage with no Kittle in the lineup, no Debo in the lineup. And who knows what's going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo's never really played with Ayuk, maybe a couple games early on last year, but Ayuk didn't find his stride yet. We know Jimmy played well with Debo. We know Jimmy played well with Kittle, and who knows what's going to happen when Trey Lance comes in if he does become the starter this year. There's a lot of question marks. But to me, I just believe in the player, believe in the system, and I believe while Debo is going to be the guy who is going to get a lot of short passes and a lot of actual rushes and those jet sweep type and get a lot of yards after the catch, Ayuk's going to be the guy downfield who they're throwing to who can also do those things that Debo's doing. So as far as wide receivers go, I have Brandon Ayuk as the number one wide receiver on the 49ers. I think Kittle's still the number one option, but I think Ayuk is going to do big things this year. I know you don't hate the man. You got him relatively high on your rankings, but I have him way high. Would you say that's maybe your biggest shock on my list, or do you have something else?
Yeah, most definitely. If they have more consistent again, this is where my evaluation of quarterback play, I just can't see that ceiling, but he does have the talent. And come to mention, I put Ayuk ahead of Debo on my list, which I'll get to in the next segment. But I wouldn't be surprised if we were talking that Debo's the better wide receiver statistically at the end.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either, to be honest. Like it's not a for sure thing that Ayuk's the number one.
Yeah. But other than that, we still have some good discrepancies, but those are the two biggest.
Yeah, I think another one which might be surprising on my list is Cooper Kupp at number 13. I think, and you have him at 18, but 13, like that's a huge gap, honestly. And not that you have him too low, but I have him really high at 13. We can speculate all we want, but we don't know what's going to happen with this Rams offense with Matthew Stafford. It could explode in a good way and just go crazy. And Cooper Kupp could be the main beneficiary of that. So could Robert Woods, who I have at number 20. And I see, you have Robert Woods at 14. So you believe in Woods more than Kupp going into this year. And I have them flipped. We actually, have them pretty close on the opposite ends.
Yeah.
But look, I've always been a Kupp believer. I hold on to that 1 year where he started off and he was like number one overall wide receiver, and he was getting crazy touchdown production and he was scoring like 40 points a game. I know that's kind of wishful thinking to hope for those type of ceilings, but I still think it can be there. And like I said, we don't know who's going to come up on top. It could be a situation where maybe Woods is the reception and yardage leader, but Kupp is the touchdown leader, and they end up very close to each other in overall fantasy points. But yeah, that's pretty interesting.
The reason I take Woods over Kupp is, in my opinion, Woods is that borderline elite receiver. He's finished top 15 the last 3 years in PPR.
He's so underrated, and to be fair, I underrate him every year. I never draft him.
Me neither. And it comes up to my tendency to stay away from quarterbacks I don't like. So I also noticed with Matt Stafford, he kind of loves his wide receiver ones. So I'm thinking he's going to be mainly running the outs. So I just like the upside that Woods is going to have over Kupp. But again, when you get to this level, once you leave the upper echelon of wide receivers, it goes into variables with all these wide receivers. So I can make arguments for them all, but I like to go with like patterns and consistency rather than high ceilings, low floors for this mid-round draft. So I take Woods 10 out of 10 over Cup, but I want Cup as well, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. And you said earlier you tend to stay away from bad quarterback play. So were you referring to Jared Goff last year, or are you referring to Stafford this year?
I was one. What did I? No, actually, I stayed away from the passing game. They had that amazing, insane hot year, and everyone reached so high.
Yeah, and that was like 2 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago.
Rams player, I stayed away, and it just goes to show, like, I rather take consistency over flash in the pan or probability of high ceiling, because at the end of the day, I just need to score more points than you overall. So that 1 week of blowing up with 40 points is going to be nice, but I rather have 22, 23, 28. That's the way I like to play. So in these rounds, I love Stafford more if he can stay healthy, which I think, shouldn't be a problem. He takes it easy. So I want Woods because I think he's going to get some good touchdown action this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we both agree that Matthew Stafford is an upgrade on Jared Goff. But is it enough of an upgrade for you? Like, to me, I wouldn't have these guys this high. Like, I don't think I'd have Cup this high if it wasn't for Matthew Stafford. Like, you seem on the fence about Stafford. Like, to me, it makes a huge difference. To you, it doesn't seem like it makes a huge difference.
No, it's kind of like he's better, but prove me wrong type of thing. I'm not gonna get bit in the behind because I jumped too early when the last 3 years I know the Lions sucked. So maybe it's not all on him, but I think he should have done more with Galladay and Jones and Hawkinson. So it's a tough situation. When you're on a bad team, it makes you look bad. So I don't want to put it all on him, but I'm not reaching. Let me just say that. I think where I have him is perfectly fair. So I'm not reaching.
Cool. All right, a couple more things that I want to talk about in our 11 through 20 range. So we both have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in our top 20. I have Mike Evans at 16, and I have Chris Godwin at 18. You have Chris Godwin at 15 and Mike Evans at 16. Another match for us, Mike Evans right there at 16. But my question for you is, and this is a debate, I think I'm seeing most fantasy analysts, they rank Godwin above Evans. And I'm kind of the opposite. I have them not too far off. I have 2 spots apart. What made you place Godwin above Evans, basically, is what I'm asking.
Just to be clear, I have him at 15 and Evans at 16. So it's not like they are huge.
And I'm sure you could easily flip-flop them any day, right?
This comes down to PPR in consideration with touchdowns. So what did we see last year? It wasn't even a great season for either of them, really. We expected much more, but
Godwin was out a lot due to injury. He missed a few games here and there. Trust me, I know, because you traded him to me for Adam Thielen, but that's a conversation for another day. And I gave you 2 wide receivers for him, but again, another day. Mike Evans struggled a lot, had a lot of 2-catch games with a touchdown.
That's what I'm saying. So if I had to break it down, Godwin's going to be great or better in PPR. Evans is going to be a touchdown guy. So I'll be honest. These 2 are my stay away froms. Like, if they fall to me, I'll take them, but I'm not excited to have them because they have a lot of weapons over there. Their offense is weird. I mean, we saw them win the Super Bowl, and it was just like anytime anyone was doing something good, it wasn't like this is Godwin's team, this is Evans' team, this is Gronkowski. Their running game is variable. The whole team is variable, and that's great in real life. But in fantasy, I need a hog. We're in wide receiver 2 range. I want my wide receiver 2 to be dependable, and I don't depend on either of them. But I'm not saying they're so bad, skip them. So I put Godwin because I rather take 5 to 7 catches over 2 catches and a touchdown week to week. That's basically how I look at it.
No, I get that. So what if I told you last year Mike Evans had 70 catches for 1,006 yards and 13 touchdowns? Would you believe me?
That seems high. No, I wouldn't.
That's what his stats were last year.
Wow. 70. How many touchdowns?
13.
I know he had a bunch of double ups, but I didn't know
13
I didn't know it
touchdowns,
led to 13.
1,000 yards, which he's crossed 1,000 yards every year of his career. 70 catches. So the 70 catches and 1,000 yards isn't like elite wide receiver one status. It's solid, but the 13 touchdowns obviously inflated his stats. And I think Brady viewed him as a red zone target because he's so big. He's basically like another Gronk for him.
Mhm.
But towards the end of the season last year, Mike Evans started to pick it up. In week 16 against the Lions, he had 10 catches, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 15, 6 catches, 110 yards. And prior to that, he was starting to pick it up a little bit. So obviously the end of the season kind of inflated his stats a little bit. But to me, I look at that as they were kind of figuring out the offense. Brady was getting used to him. I think they got comfortable with each other. And so I think that Mike Evans is going to do better season long. I think he's going to have more catches and more yards, but less touchdowns.
He's
Ultimately,
less touchdowns than Godwin, or just less in general?
Less than 13 is what I mean. So he probably have like maybe like 85 catches, 1,200 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like I think he's going to get back to being more consistent. And so, anyways, my point being is like I feel comfortable with Mike Evans as a solid wide receiver 2. I mean, you have him as wide receiver 2 as well, but for me with Godwin, everybody's talking about Godwin, and easily like it's not a question for them. They have him above Evans, and I'm just like, why? Because you didn't see anything to warrant that last year, in my opinion. It's all speculation.
Yeah, I think this is the difference. I think this is where people's ceiling comes into play, because Evans had 5 more receptions than Godwin, and Godwin missed a bunch of games. So
true, that's a good point.
I think they're going to stay neck and neck. But here's the difference: is Evans going to bust out in 45, 55-yard touchdowns, or Godwin more likely? I'm going to take the cross routes on the slot with Evans than I am on a 8-yard curl for a red zone target for Evans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Godwin's going to have more catches if they play this amount of games. Godwin will have more catches.
Yeah, and that's why I put them neck and neck, because this is the most difficult part. Because if they were on their own teams, I would love their value much more. But just how I have Amari at 12 and CD at 13, and I have Woods and Cup so close, when you have these type of caliber receivers together, it's great in real life, but in fantasy, it brings them down because everyone's got to get a little piece. So it ruins the top 10 potential, but puts them in the 15 potential. That's the point of this rank. So I agree with you. If what you're saying happens, I'm not surprised at all. I have them neck and neck.
I don't hate either guy, but if I'm sitting there and I have to take one of them, I'm gonna go Mike Evans. In my opinion, I think Evans has a higher ceiling. I agree with people for the most part that if Godwin stays healthy all year, he's going to be more reliable. Like he's not going to lose you matchups every week. Evans could, but I think Evans has the potential, like a higher ceiling. Basically,
he is a top 10 talent wide receiver. If he was playing with a gunslinging quarterback like we saw with Jameis Winston, he's a top 10 wide receiver. But the offense is different. And
you're right.
Before we move off this list, there's 2 things I have to talk about, because the next receivers are a jumble, but right here means a lot. So I have Pittman at 9, and you have him at 12. I know it's not that far, but you really think he's going to fall off the top end with Herbert on a full year playing with another year of practice under his belt?
Yeah, that one was tough because, like I told you, any of the guys in my bottom top 10 could finish as a top 5 guy. I also think Keenan Allen could.
Yeah,
but you know what's weird? I think Keenan Allen could, but I don't think Allen Robinson could, which is weird. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't see.
That's testament to how good A-Rob is, because if he was in a better receiver,
that's what I'm saying. I have him at number 11, and
we both do. I didn't like it, but it is what it is. Now the most I think egregious one we have here, and I need you to help me. DJ Moore, I even struggled putting him at 20, dude. It made me – I didn't want to. Prove me wrong. You and Joe are high on this guy. Tell me why.
I'll bring these back up
I'm
again.
not sure why I should want this guy on my team. And keep in mind, I had him. I rooted for him last year, and then I had to get rid of him. So tell me why I want him.
So we talked about, you asked about Keenan Allen first real quick. I'll just address that a little bit. But I just think, look, that could be the one I'm the most wrong on is Keenan Allen. Because like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he's number 7 or number 6, 5 by the time the year ends. But I just think that I actually am very risk averse. So I avoid players that I personally have experienced since I've been playing fantasy be injured a lot. And I've seen Keenan Allen injured a lot. Yes, recently he stayed more healthy than not, but I just have a feeling that he's going to, miss weeks and leave more games than we think. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably have him a lot higher. As far as DJ Moore goes, look, I think when we're doing these rankings and when we draft players, I think a little bit of personal influence and our experience with those players goes into this thought process. Like, you have a long history with Allen Robinson as far as a fantasy manager goes. I have a relatively, he hasn't been in the league as long, but I have a relatively, long relationship with DJ Moore as a fantasy manager. When the dynasty league that you and I are currently in, that you took over a team for recently, when we drafted, I basically I waited on wide receiver for a long time because I took a lot of running backs, took a lot of quarterbacks, took a high tight end pick. I waited on wide receiver, but when I took wide receiver, I took DJ Moore and Cooper Kupp, and those were my starting 2 wide receivers on my team. But I had CMC, I had Derrick Henry. I had, Watson, and, my other positions were stacked. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to rock with these guys. And this was 2 years ago, not last year, but the year before. DJ Moore went insane that year. I got to bring it up, but DJ Moore, and I believe this was 2019.
Yeah, and put him on the map.
Yeah, he had and look, if you look at it, 2019, he had 87 catches. And last year he had 66 catches. So and he had 4 touchdowns both years, which is so weird. I just think he's a PPR monster. I think that Sam Darnold, I actually really believe in Sam Darnold. I think he's going to kind of have a revival there in Carolina. And I think Sam Darnold's better than Teddy Bridgewater at this point in their career. And DJ Moore hasn't really played with a better hasn't had really good quarterback play at all since in his entire career. I think he might have played with Cam his rookie year. That was 2018. I think Cam was still around, and he didn't do great. But it's more belief in the players. I just think he's I think he's the number 1 in Carolina, hands down. A lot of people might say maybe Robbie Anderson or there's a lot of buzz about Terrace Marshall, but I think new quarterback, new situation, and I just think he's the man, and he's going to get a lot of receptions, basically. That's how I look at it.
You know which year he had more yards, this year or last year?
So 2020, he had more yards, actually.
Yeah.
But not by much, though. It was 1193 and 1175, yeah.
But with a discrepancy of near 20 catches, that's big. So the thing about DJ Moore, that's the variable I'm not liking. He's so hot, or he's just whatever. 4 touchdowns.
That's a good point.
It's not something I like. But look at his stats from last year. He had 4 games with over 100 yards, and then 5 games at just the crease, 93, 96. This guy is. If he gets the volume, he will be great. I just need him to get the volume. And with CMC back, hopefully healthy a whole year, what does that do? Darnold, we don't know. He's never produced. So it's kind of like there's other options that I'd rather take. And if I miss out on DJ Moore this year, great. But I'll be ready for him next year. That's my outlook,
Yeah, and I understand that. And to be, you're right about Sam Darnold. It is a little bit unknown. Where if you choose, if you draft Amari Cooper, right, he's back with Dak, you know what to expect, right? But with DJ Moore, with Sam Darnold, you don't know what to expect. But to be fair, you brought up CMC. His best year was when CMC was healthy all year and balling the hell out. So I don't know how that correlates, how CMC just being on the field and getting all this volume ultimately helps DJ Moore get more receptions, but it does. So we'll see. Maybe those things help. And I think it's really unpredictable. Like this offense can go either way, and this could be. I talked about having Keenan Allen too low might be one of my mistakes, but having DJ Moore this high could be another one of my mistakes because I would not be surprised at all, honestly. Like because it can go either way. What if Sam Darnold connects with Terrace Marshall Jr. like right away, and then that he ends up being the best fantasy wide receiver on their team? Like I wouldn't be shocked with that. And that's to say there's no locked in number one wide receiver on Carolina, I don't think.
No.
Like most teams
there is actually CMC.
Yeah, you're right. You're damn right about that. And half of CMC because he's half wide receiver, half running back. So I will ask you one more question about your 11 through 20, and it'll help us transition to our 21 through 30. And that is, I have Julio Jones at 19, and we talked about him a little bit. I believe you have Julio at number 25. So while I bring up our next list here, why don't you talk about Julio? Why so low?
So on my list, I have Julio at 25, and it's no slight on him. He's just a bit older, and that team is run heavy, and A.J. Brown's a freaking beast. So how can I justify putting him ahead of people like Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson, who's, if he's healthy, he's going to be really good. And I like Golladay in New York. So it's not a slight on him. Just when we get 15 to even 30, it's very difficult, and I can make arguments for all of them. It's the reason why people punt on wide receivers and go heavy running backs, because you can still get a nice player. Now, if you leave the draft with Julio as your wide receiver 1, you may not have had a good day. But if you have him as your wide receiver 2 while still getting 2 nice running backs, you might be good. So if that happens, that would be great. But 25 is nice for me. So at 21, I got Deontay. At 22, I got Thielen. 23, Ayuk. 24, Golladay. 25, Julio. 26, Chase. 27, Boyd. 28, Juju. 29, Debo. And 30, Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to list your list next. So cool. I'll list mine, and then we'll get into this a little bit more. So at number 21, I have T. Higgins. At number 22, I have Chase Claypool. At number 23, I have Adam Thielen. 24, Tyler Lockett. 25, Odell Beckham Jr. 26, Kenny Golladay. 27, Jamar Chase. 28, Deontay Johnson. 29, Devontae Smith. And 30, Debo Samuel. So what do you feel strongly about on your list when we get down to here?
Oh, man. None of it. I really it's so hard.
It gets tough down here, right? Because a lot of these guys, their roles are harder to predict, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of have similar players in here. I guess the only difference, I'm not going to compare to your list, but I really do feel strong about Golladay if I can get him at this point, because I don't like Daniel Jones, but there's nothing else there. And he wants to show up. He wants to say, hey, last year was not a good representation of who I am as a wide receiver. So hopefully they get things clicking. If Golladay falls to me at this point, I will take him and I'll enjoy it. But as far as everybody else, I wanted to put Thielen higher, but he has such an amazing year of touchdowns. I couldn't assume that again.
Yeah,
a lot of mouths to feeds in Pittsburgh. So Deontay, Juju, Chase, it's difficult. It's difficult, but I'll like Golladay in this section.
Yeah, so let's talk about Golladay a little bit more, because you have him at 24, I have him at 26. And remember, I believe in our running back rankings, you had Mixon like in the 20s, right?
Mm.
I believe so. And
yeah,
I asked you, what if I told you I can guarantee you 100% that Mixon is healthy all year? Then you said you would move him up to like around 14 or something like that. If somebody, a magic genie, came down and said, I'm going to guarantee Kenny Golladay is 100% healthy all year long, I would probably have him above Brandon Ayuk, which is super ironic because that's actually wide receiver 14, where you said you would move Mixon. But I would consider moving Golladay that high. So my main concern, reason why I have Galladay this low, and I love Kenny G. When he was healthy, playing with Matt Stafford, catching those touchdowns, he used to be my favorite non-Niner wide receiver to watch in the league. Now CeeDee Lamb has taken that spot, but I still love Galladay. I have him every year. I always had him on my dynasty and my keeper team, and I believed in him. I talk him up. I tell the homies, hey, Galladay's going to kill it this year, and then he gets injured again. And I'm like, it makes me look stupid. So, I can't control injuries. Nobody can. But it's just to a point where I can't invest too much of my, I don't feel comfortable with him anymore as my wide receiver. Like, I guess if depending on your team, not wide receiver 1, no, but wide receiver 2, I wouldn't feel great about it, but I'd be cool with it. I would make sure I have some guys I can fill in because he's going to miss some time. But like I said, the team's not great. The defense isn't great. So I could see if they're in a lot of shootouts, Kenny Galladay eating, but he's got to stay on the field. He's like Julio stays healthier than he does these days. So that's saying something.
Yeah, I see that. It's these wide receivers are hard. I want to root for Galladay. I'm hoping to prove me wrong.
Yeah, for sure. So anything on my list that stands out to you crazy or anything like that?
Yeah, I think you have Odell pretty high.
Yeah, you don't have Odell here, huh?
I don't have Odell near there. I don't.
Yeah.
The fact you have him at top 25 means he's still living in people's mind off that 1 year, and it's just like that.
It wasn't just 1 year, all right?
That offense they showed you that they're a playoff team now. Great. But that doesn't mean I want pieces of their wide receiver game because Chubb and Hunt are beasts. Landry's also good, but OBJ it doesn't excite me. I don't want him in my wide receiver 2 range. You have him a wide receiver 3 borderline, but I stay away from it.
No, and I understand. And it takes a lot to believe in him this much. And it's just that I don't even have, it's not like I don't have Odell in any significant, dynasty or keeper leagues or anything like that. I just believe in this guy. And he's not a scrub. He just I don't know what it is. Ever since he went to Cleveland, and look, he did get injured a lot, but a lot of his injuries were like big season-ending injuries. Like every time he got injured, it wasn't like he's banged up. Oh, we don't know if he's coming in. We don't know if he's back this week. Like he had a major injury in New York, and he had a major injury here, season-ending injury. So I just think he's gonna produce. He just has to stay on the field and build some chemistry with Baker. And honestly, I thought there was a possibility that the Browns would move on from him this year. Ship him somewhere else, ship him to the Bucs, or ship him to Green Bay, or something like that. And I was kind of hoping for that because I think if he did go to one of those scenarios, I wouldn't want him on the Bucs. So that was before Antonio Brown went there. That people were kind of hoping for that, but or before Antonio Brown returned this offseason. But I just think I believe in the player. Like, it wasn't just 1 year. He was a fantasy superstar for multiple years. And I think, not saying he can ever get back to that, he was at one point like the number 1 wide receiver that people were drafting some years. I don't think he'll ever get back to that. But if he can get back, do enough to be a solid wide receiver too, that's what I'm hoping for and predicting. And I even have him in wide receiver 3 range. So, mid to high wide receiver 3 range. So I don't think that's too crazy. But do you have him ranked at all? Is he in your top? Is he in your 30s?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, you have him at 33. I see. Yeah. No, but that's one of our major discrepancies here is that I have Odell ranked and you don't in the top 21 through 30. So I see we both have Chase here, pretty close. I have Devontae Smith at 29, which I don't know if you have Smith ranked at all. I don't think you do.
I don't. I mean, the Eagles are nice and everything, but it's a very variable thing with that offense. I mean, he's a rookie receiver, could blow up, but I just don't know what I'm supposed to expect out of a full season of Jalen Hurts. He ran a lot when he was
That's fair.
he was throwing big numbers. So if he ends up really nice, but who's to say that Jalen Rager isn't the guy? Who's to say that Fulgham doesn't have a nice game? It's just that again, I'm not reaching. I'm not reaching for this wide receiver core at all. I considered it, but it could be a nice burst as a flex option week 6 plus. It's hard
Now
to
you're
say.
right, and that's fair because we're talking redraft. If we were, like I said, if we were talking dynasty, you'd probably have Smith higher because who knows whose quarterback's going to be for the majority of his career. But I just think, look, he's an amazing player from Alabama, had the Heisman year. He's a lot of people like knocking him down because he's too skinny or whatever. I just think he's gonna kill it in the NFL. He's gonna get a lot of touchdowns. He was already banged up. He missed practice. He missed preseason games so far. He might be coming back here soon. And his ADP fell a little bit during this little injury stint. But I don't think I'm investing too much ranking him here at number 29. You're talking about having him as maybe a wide receiver 3, maybe a wide receiver 4. So I don't think it's too crazy, but yeah. So let's get, unless you have anything significant to point out here, let's go ahead.
I have 2 things as the
Okay,
guru.
let's go.
2 things as the guru. One, I want to get into Tyler Lockett, and I thought I had him at pretty low at 19. I can't justify putting him any lower, but you have him at 24, so we probably aren't agreeing. So this is probably more for the people at home that they might be fairly new, they might be casual, wanting to learn how to get more in depth so they can get that chip at the end of the year. But my fade of the year is Lockett, and at 19 I should probably drop him down, but I still think that offense is good and the passing game will have to come up more because their running game has took a hit. But if you look at his years last year, you'd be like, oh my god, this guy is borderline wide receiver 1. This guy is going to be an awesome option. You got to take into consideration he had a couple games that was out of this world, like games of 20 catches or game, but multiple 3 touchdown games. That is not going to happen. That will not. If that happens again, I'll bite my tongue, but I almost promise you that will not happen at all. So if you draft him at his ADP, you should trade him for value plus when the season starts. That's my personal sentiment. And I thought I kind of had him low. I could see justifying putting him ahead of Robert Woods and Godwin and such because that's a high-octane offense too. So me dropping him down there, but you have him at 24. So you tell me why you dropped him to 24.
So look, if you pull up the Tyler Lockett, if you go in your whatever your fantasy app is of preference, and you go to last year's stats and you rank them by fantasy points, and you look, you're going to see Tyler Lockett in the top 10, top 12, depending on scoring format, right? And look, I knew this, but this is something that has become more clear to me this year specifically, is we use where a fantasy player finished as a way as like to argue their worth, right? So if we're saying, I'm trying to trade you Aaron Jones, Justin, he finished number 5 last year overall running backs. Okay, that's cool. He's top 5 running back. But on a weekly basis, did he influence your matchup enough to help you win multiple weeks of your fantasy season? And a guy like Aaron Jones does. He's pretty consistent, right? Tyler Lockett. So to me, what matters more, it doesn't matter how many fantasy points you finished as an NFL player. It's about how many weekly matchups did you impact to help that fantasy manager win. And if you look at it for Tyler Lockett, because that's more important than helping me. I'd rather you help me not lose 8 matchups than help me win only 2. So basically, Tyler Lockett helped fantasy managers. He had 2 or 3 huge blow-up games. In, I believe, week 7, he had 15 catches and 200 yards against the Cardinals. And he had a couple other crazy games like that. He had 3 touchdowns that game. That's insane. And that game alone inflates his stats. That's great. He's capable of that. Awesome. I don't ever want to take that away from a player. They did that. It deserves to be in their stats. But is he helping me win every week? Or is it a guessing game? Do I want to play that guessing game every week? Or do I want somebody more reliable? So basically, if that all makes sense, I hope it does. But that's why I have Tyler Lockett low, because he's losing me matchups every week so I can maybe win one or two throughout the season. So I just don't feel comfortable with him as my wide receiver 2.
Yeah, he put it perfect. I think we're both agreeing. So that's my fade. I made a huge mistake, and I swear I made the biggest mistake I can. And I want to say our good friend Gio offered me a package involving Diggs coming back to me, and I was high. I was living that 200-yard game. I was loving it. I was
Yeah,
like, hey,
how could you give that up
we're gonna
too?
get 2 more. I want to say I had to throw more on top, but it doesn't matter. I should have done it no matter what. Like it wasn't something egregious. Like give me Zeke and Lockett. No, it
Well, see,
wasn't.
that's a perfect example. Somebody like Diggs is helping you win matchups every single week.
Yeah,
You know?
I wouldn't have won the chip because I had to go against Kamara, but that would have made me feel a lot better every other week. So the lesson is he's my fade of the year, and if you have to draft him, trade him for value. That's my opinion. But
Yeah,
one
that's a
more
good
thing,
point. He's definitely one of those guys that you trade after he has a big blow up game.
and then one more thing I want to point out with this list is the huge, I think maybe the biggest discrepancy of all the wide receivers, apart from people we just completely left off. I have Tyler Boyd at 27, and you have him down to 37. That's a big drop off. So you really think adding Jamar Chase is going to be like detrimental to this guy?
That is, I'm so disappointed in myself for that. Because I look, and I'll go ahead since that'll be our little transition to the 31 through 40. I'll talk about Boyd and then I'll get into my list. I love Tyler Boyd. I think he's super safe. I think he's so reliable. He's like the opposite of Tyler Lockett, right? Like the complete opposite. Very reliable, gonna get you that 10 to 15 points a game, but he's never gonna blow up for 40.
22 with a touchdown.
Yeah, 22 with a touchdown. So he's like, I love him as my wide receiver 3, maybe as a wide receiver 4, but I just think it's nothing against him necessarily. I just and look, I have no problem. Like I have Shark ahead of him. I have Juju ahead of him. Like it would not surprise me at all if he finishes basically above any. Like honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Tyler Boyd's a top 25 wide receiver. So there's a lot of flexibility in these ranges. Like I love him honestly, and I'm honestly ashamed to have him that low. I don't know what else to say.
No, I hear you. I'll add some of that, but we can get to our list and then I'll
okay. I'll go ahead and list mine real quick. I have Robbie Anderson at 31, Corey Davis at 32, Jerry Jeudy at 33, Cortland Sutton at 34, Juju Smith-Schuster at 35, DJ Chark at 36, Tyler Boyd at 37, Brandon Cooks at 38, Michael Pittman Jr. at 39, and Michael Gallup at 40.
Oof, I love the Pittman throw. I love it.
Yep.
For me, I got DJ Shark at 31, Cooks at 32, OBJ at 33, Chenault 34, Corey Davis 35, Fuller at 36, Sutton at 37, Curtis Samuels at 38. I know Joe would get really mad to see him that low. Antonio Brown at 39, and last Landry from the Browns. So I mean, to go back to the Boyd issue, I have a much higher. You say he can finish higher, but I'm kind of like looking at it from this perspective. You know how many receptions Tyler Boyd had last year?
Guessing 80.
Yeah. Oh my, really close. 79 catches on 120 yards.
That was a guess. Wow.
Yeah, that's how you know you should listen to this man when he talks. So do you know how many receptions T. Higgins had?
I'm guessing something like 60.
Close, 67.
Oh.
And how about AJ Green?
How many catches?
Yeah.
I don't even know. I know he had a lot of targets, but I'm guessing maybe like 50.
Wow, man, 47. All right. So
I paid attention to the Bengals a lot last year.
So this is the best part. I'm happy you said that premise of a lot of targets. He had 104 targets. You understand that? So we had 108 targets for T. Higgins, 104 for AJ Green, 110 for Tyler Boyd. Let's call them each get 105, right?
Yeah.
So I like Tyler Boyd. Like you said, probably the most safe wide receiver next to Allen Robinson in the past 2 years. I think you bring in Chase, tell him do what AJ Green did, take in those 100 targets. Nothing's going to change for Boyd. It's just going to. You can say all those misses on AJ Green's point, it wouldn't have led to more receptions to Green and Higgins, to Boyd and Higgins. But if I give Chase 80 to 105 targets, I'm not thinking that the world ends for Boyd. So I want him on my team still. That was my point of it. So I love Chase as a potential. I love Boyd as a floor. So that's why I have him higher, but I understand your low points.
Yeah, to me, it's more of I think Chase is going to perform, right? So that's Burrow's boy. He brought him in. They probably would have drafted the offensive lineman if it wasn't for Burrow, because Burrow was championing for Chase to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to click, in my opinion. And I know we've seen it before. We've seen it with, the Rams a few years ago. We've seen it with the Cowboys, where like 3 wide receivers are very useful in fantasy. And I do think all 3 of these guys are going to be very useful in fantasy. We saw it in Carolina last year. All 3 guys, including Curtis Samuel, finished top 25. So it's possible, but I just think it's hard to predict. How can you project 3 wide receivers on one team to be top 30 wide receivers? To me, that's just difficult to do. So unfortunately, Boyd's the odd man out, but he's also the safest one out of all of them, especially at his ADP. And honestly, like in redraft, on Dynasty, I'll reach for T. Higgins all day and Jamar Chase all day, because I think those guys have limitless ceilings. But in like just a regular redraft, I'm probably not going to draft Higgins and Chase because they're going to go too high, and I'll end up grabbing Boyd later because he's so reliable. I love having Boyd as, we play in a lot of 2 flex leagues. I love having Boyd as that second flex, or I'm cool with him as that first flex even.
If my second flex, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but I just want you to choose one thing in your 31 through 40 list that you want to touch on, and I'll go ahead and choose one for me. I think I got to go with our boy Michael Pittman Jr. A lot of people, and think about which ones you want to touch on or what you want to touch on your list, Justin, but I'll go ahead and talk about MPJ real quick. And a lot of people, he was gaining a lot of buzz and a lot of hype, right? A lot of people talking about him. Some people not so hot on him, but a lot of the industry was. But then, and similar to Jonathan Taylor, Carson Wentz goes down. Quentin Nelson goes down. Oh, the whole offense is screwed. I'm going to bring Jonathan Taylor down. I'm going to bring Michael Pittman Jr. down. To me, yes, like I said last week, yes, that is going to influence Michael Pittman and limit him, and maybe he's not going to do as well as some of us thought he was going to do. But he's still the same guy, still the same player. Somebody's going to be throwing the ball, and somebody on that team has to catch balls. I don't think there's a lot of competition on this team for a guy to emerge as the alpha, and I think he is for sure the likely one. And we've seen terrible teams with terrible quarterbacks support, or the Colts aren't even a bad team. But my point is that, and they're not a bad offense, obviously. But my point is that, like, if we've seen terrible teams with terrible quarterbacks support wide receiver 2s, why can't Michael Pittman be a wide receiver 2? So obviously I have him ranked as a wide receiver 4 here, but I think his ceiling's even higher than that. So for me to put him at 39, I have no problem with it.
I love him. I think the Wentz business hurts, and
it absolutely does. Yeah.
There's such a strong running team, but I had to make this list based off current injuries, so I had to leave him off. But he was right there as my 40, as my 39, but I just didn't go to him. But I love him. I like it, and I hope we're surprised and see him top 25.
So I was going to ask you, what is the one guy you regret not being able to put on this list? Do you think it would be Michael Pittman Jr.?
Without a doubt. Hands down, without a doubt.
So I'll tell you mine, because I was going to ask us that at the end of the show, but mine is Mike Williams. I had Mike Williams at 41, and I had to go Michael Gallup over him. And I know you're a hater, man. You asked me last week, you're like, or a couple weeks ago, like, you're really going to believe in this guy again? Heck yeah. He just needs to stay healthy, and he's going to eat with Justin Herbert. But have you ever watched that man play?
He's an athletic freak. Yeah,
he plays crazy. So recklessly. That's why he gets hurt all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a fan favorite, but I'm only happy you love him, so I can get to my players. So I hope you take him. That would be nice. I hope you guys fight over him.
Nice, for sure. So what do you got, man? What do you want to touch on in your list the most?
He was my runner-up to sleeper of the year, like the undercover great pick that's going to win for you, Chenault.
I knew it. I knew you were going to talk about him.
I think last year he had some spurts, but Minshew and company, it didn't work out. So I won't be surprised if DJ Shark or Chenault or maybe even Marvin Jones is the wide receiver one, him less likely. But there's no reason why they can't all thrive if Trevor Lawrence is the talent that we all think he is to be. So I don't know anybody else has Chenault on the radar. And to give some perspective, I kind of regretted drafting Chenault in our Dynasty League over a rookie. But if he was a rookie this year, I would have drafted him where I wanted him anyway, so it didn't hurt. Like it was
I'll tell you what, that was a great pick by you. He should have never. So basically, in our Dynasty rookie draft, Chenault was an available free agent out there. So all those veteran free agents go into the draft as well. And Justin took him with the 104 or 204, I believe. The fourth pick in the second round. Great pick. And ever since you've done that, I've seen Chenault's hype rise. And I'm like, damn it, Justin, such a good pick.
Yeah. So I love him. I think if we look at all the great quarterbacks, if Trevor Lawrence is that great quarterback, there's no reasons why two wide receivers can't eat. So he's something I want you all to keep an eye on. But my number one sleeper sell of the year, and I think it's a sleeper sell, but I know you like him too, is Corey Davis. If you look at his ADP or where he ranks, and it's not like he moved into a role behind Devontae Adams or something, which would have been nice. But he's the lone guy pretty much over there. And I know it's a new quarterback that not many people like, but who's his competition over there in New York right now? It's
Jameson Crowder, Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims. But, dude, Corey Davis was balling out last year, had his best season last year, and then he signs big money with the Jets. Look, there's like the Giants, right? They don't pay Kenny Golladay all that money not to use him. The Jets didn't pay Corey Davis all this money not to use him. He's going to be their number one. Mm-hmm. And look, the number one on any team, like even like Brandon Cooks, right, on the Texans, is valuable because every team has to throw. Sometimes I think we get it in our heads that like, this team sucks so much that we don't even want their number one wide receiver. You should want that guy as maybe your wide receiver 3 or 4 or your flex because somebody has to catch targets on that team.
Yeah, and I don't want to live in the past or anything, but I don't think you're drafted 5th overall because you're nothing. You know what I mean? So I think he can bounce back and keep the bounce back going and be that 4th round or that 4th wide receiver that ends up being your wide receiver 2, and everyone else is just booming off of it. So
this is why wide receivers definitely the most position that has the most depth. And this is why, you can wait on wide receiver. And if you come away with you end up drafting like Julio Jones, Corey Davis, Robbie Anderson, like you can make it work, and you can bulk up at those other positions. So I think
Kelsey and Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's something to be said about that. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the First Round Fantasy Podcast. Justin and I talking our top 40 wide receivers for the 2021 season. We want to thank everybody for watching this video. Also, like I said at the beginning, remember, next week we're going to be talking our top 15 tight ends, and we're also going to be discussing when do you draft a tight end? Do you aim for one of those top 3 or 4 guys? Do you go in the middle and go for maybe, a bottom, top 10 guy, or do you just wait all the way to the end? We're going to talk about it, give our different opinions on it going into next week. Again, thank you for watching. For Justin, for Jacob, we will see you guys next time.